We're in.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, coffee moaners.
Good morning.
It's gone chilly again today.
Yeah.
After a gorgeous weekend, which we were lucky enough to be away for, and it was just lovely.
I've got socks on.
He's got socks on.
Which is news, because I like, as soon as possible, to get my hobbit's feet out into the air. As soon as the weather permits. I could happily wear... I've got to the age where I'm a man who wears sandals. Oh, God.
At least you're not wearing socks.
I don't wear socks with sandals, no. But
anyway, so lovely to see you all. It has gone miserable, but, you know, I'm going to say something controversial here. I'm quite pleased about that, because when I'm back to work, I don't like it to be too sunny, because I want to be in the garden.
Yeah. It's great, but it's coming back. Anyway, we're talking... God, we sound English. Good morning,
That's what
Susan
I thought. I
Sellers.
thought, let's just do a proper English opening.
Anthony Foligno, welcome back.
The weather.
We didn't scare you away with our mad Italian chat on Friday, whenever it was. So what are we talking about today, Coffee Moaners? We're talking about, what is a Men's Day? Some would argue every day is a Man's Day. Every day is a Men's Day. This is not Men's Day as in International Man's Day, which is International Women's Day, Men's Day, which is November 19th, interestingly. This is days that you can spend with other men doing manly or not manly things, sort of in a sort of pursuit of mindfulness. We're going to be talking about, is rage on the increase? I posted on my Instagram, on Coffee Moaning Instagram, an image of the chap who was caught up in a road rage incident. I think he was actually sentenced. I think he got a custodial sentence for screaming abuse.
Custodial?
I think he did, yeah. I think it was quite severe, yeah. And it spoke to his case, the distinction between anger versus aggression. Rage, when it leads to anger, when is anger permitted and when isn't it permitted, and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk also about, as you mentioned at the end there, why the various health differences between men and women. We've got 9 health differences between the sexes. We're going to put them to the test, aren't we, Ned?
Yes, we are.
We are going to put them to the test. And finally, we're also going to be talking about we're going to be doing an update on the Gaza-Israel crisis. And if we have time, we might just have a little chit-chat about the BAFTAs. So where should we start? Should we start with Men's Days? By the way, how was your weekend, guys? Tori sorry, I just want to read this. Thought the Italian chat was hilarious and actually quite spot on. Tori.
Says Tori, who's married to an Italian and lives in Italy.
Ciao bella. Sorry, Ashley Ferrigno. Is it Ashley Ferrigno? Sorry, Ashley. Hi, Ashley Gardner. How you doing, matey? Julie Hilton, hi. Love your scarf, says Tori as well.
Thank you.
Oh, Hannah Leapshoots. Did you like Love Lies Bleeding as well?
Love Lies Bleeding.
It's the film, the wrestling. No. She's just saying she saw Love Lies Bleeding.
Oh.
Yeah. Thought the Italian... I've already done that. So what were you saying, Ned, about the scarf?
I wasn't.
You were. Someone said something about how
nice
your scarf. Yeah, keffiyeh.
Yeah.
National keffiyeh.
If you are going to buy one of these, guys, like you say, yesterday was National Keffiyeh Day, and you do not have to be Palestinian to wear one of these. It is not an appropriation. This is a real symbol of the Palestinian and the Palestinians and their right to exist. And so by wearing one, you are supporting that. And you will see now just globally people wearing them. And one thing I would say, please try and buy them from a proper Palestinian manufacturer, not from Amazon. Don't buy from Amazon, because there's a lot of very dodgy people selling them on Amazon.
Just a little bit more sort of chin wag before we get into the stories. Christopher Cundall, this week's episode of Leon the Beast was phenomenal. Loved it. So good. It was fun,
thank
wasn't
you.
It? And there was one other
If you're wondering what that is our show that Mark has made with our dear friend Lee, who's a cocktail enthusiast, as he says. And so it's been just fantastic, hasn't it?
Last episode lands this weekend.
The last episode of this bar lands this weekend, but there are many other. I had a couple of people DM me saying we'd like you to come to the bar.
Fantastic, good stuff.
So we're going to be moving on to the next bar pretty soon.
So I'm just noticing, Minky Moo, where's your comment gone? Sorry, it's like, when you get into a sort of rhythm of kind of talking and then not. Minky Moo says this: people are operating at boiling point most of the time. So I think we should talk about this first. I think we should talk about rage, the rage epidemic. And this is a piece in today's Guardian. Is our modern world fueling aggression? Let me pop up this chap rather astonishing chap's face. This is what a driver was greeted to in a road rage incident.
Do you remember this a few months ago? It was just absolutely, but being in South London, this sort of thing happens all the time. This wasn't such a shock. I can't remember where this was, but maybe it was in a sort of nicer, calmer area. But yeah, so the story here is, well, it's not really a story. This is Peter Abbott, who was screaming road rage abuse through a car window. It went viral. But this is a piece just looking at the idea or exploring the idea as to whether. Yeah. Sorry, can I just wanted to see if he did get crossed over.
It doesn't mention it here, but I do seem to remember he certainly got a more severe sentence or punishment than was expected. I think the feeling was that he'd crossed a certain sort of line in the sand. But this piece kind of looks at and references a Gallup Global Emotions Report. Anger around the world has been rising since 2016, with 23% of respondents feeling angry on any given day. Road rage incidents have increased by 40% from 2021 to 2022. And so it's just a piece, it's a kind of features piece on what is anger, aggression. At what point does anger tip over into something that needs to be stopped? When is it all right to, I always remember in recovery, I'll throw this on the table, was they'd always say anger is an absolutely valid emotion. It's a human emotion. You can't, I think, and so the difference is, what do you do with that anger? How does that anger express itself? And I think anger and aggression are two really difficult things, because I think aggression can increase socially. And I wonder, this is where I'm throwing my gauntlet down. I think there is increasing rage, and I think there's increasing rage with the system, with a system that kind of makes everyone feel, regardless of your category of person, if you like, whether it be white, male, middle class, whatever, and every other kind of diverse kind of, part of society, everyone feels unheard. And this leads to a bubbling and a containment and a constriction that bursts out in aggression. And I think there would have been a time where you could distinguish between anger and aggression. I think the fear of being aggressive or the feeling of being constrained is making people spill into aggressive behavior.
Susan Selling says, no one has any patience anymore. And I just wanted to, Jules. Yeah, I'm bubbling away most of the time these days. In my case, I blame the menopause, though. Not sure the courts would allow for that, though, if I smash someone in the face. But I think things like menopause, premenstrual tension,
I'm going to pop comments up as we talk.
Stress at work. If we're talking more to men, who don't have menopause or hormonal, the everyday things that we suppress. I think when we have new challenges like the menopause or like extra stress, those things that we are actually angry about come out just because we don't have that extra brakes. We don't have the extra brakes on to stop it. And my belief is like the brakes that we put, and I've shared with you before, guys, that I have, both Mark and I can have a terrible temper. It can just fly off the handle. And we're both always trying to work on that. It's a weakness. It's not a strength. But it's not weak to be angry, and it's not weak to be, to feel like you've had enough. But the secret, obviously, is to release that when and where it comes. Like, for instance, Mark and I, when we have the most terrible, terrible rows, like screaming rows, it's usually because we've kept so much in for so long that it then comes out. And often we keep it in because we think, this is too small a thing. Or this is a thing that I'm just going to wait for it to just see if it gets better. Because often in arguments, many of you will have done the same. You might say, well, why didn't you tell me this before? And it'll be because, I was hoping it would go away, or I was hoping it would just get better, but it doesn't. I think the things that come in and upset or hurt us or angst, they don't go away. They just nestle in somewhere else. And I think that's when we are then in danger of becoming a victim of our own anger, because then it may come out in a really explosive way if you're an explosive person, and then you've diminished yourself, you've embarrassed yourself. Or if you are somebody that never gets it out, and I really believe this is very much my personal opinion, I think that causes disease. I think that causes disease. I think when you suppress and you keep quiet, sometimes when you see those people in a partnership and they're just always biting their lip and they never, ever say how they feel. I always think, what is going on? Where is that going? That anger. And so I do think it's about, releasing the gauge bit by bit. Now, in this article, it talks about, for instance, road rage. And it talks about how they did these tests, didn't they? Lab tests with young students. And they would get them to electrocute each other.
Oh, but no, when this was back in 1969.
Yeah, way back. And they would, when they were anonymous, when you couldn't see them, they would electrocute a lot more. They would hurt the person.
They weren't killing people.
No.
They
would
administer.
It's
great. Yeah, but just to give the context of the test, so they would be asked to administer an electric shock.
Yeah,
and they would do more and for longer if they were hit.
So this isn't a controlled laboratory sort of situation, but they were likening this to what happens to people when they get in a car. They're suddenly in this is their world. This is the entire globe in the car, and it's really weird because I don't drive. I'm never allowed to say to any driver, whether it's Martin, my sister, whatever, I'm never allowed to say, oh God, you're a bit like, you don't drive. Yep. You don't know what it's like. But I'm not so much, I'm looking at that person thinking, God, you're going to be so angry for like so long.
Oh, see, Abbott is facing a prison sentence.
He is. Yeah, wow.
Well, no, I thought they are. That's interesting that you came at that whole section in this article, Read the Car, with the line that you did, because I thought it was a really good piece about how driving a car is actually, the reason we get so much road rage is driving a car is actually a perfect storm scenario for stress, because it is actually incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly complex. You are actually having to deal with an enormous number of hazards that are approaching you at all times. You're also having to deal with people in the car who have very strong opinions on what you're doing with the car.
I keep my mouth shut all the time.
Well, yeah, but
I do.
So no, but my point always about driving is never that it's right to lose your temper. But when a driver does, I know Dina does, I do, your dad used to, my mum used to, when you do lose your shit with other drivers, it's often, again, speaks to the same thing, which is it's over a period of time. You haven't done it so many times. And then finally, you're just like exasperated. And you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is
Dina does it every single time she gets in the car for the entire time she's in the car. And I'm thinking, not at people. She's not shouting at people, but she's like, and I sit there and I think, my God, you've got because you're so in it, you don't know how much energy like you're using in this rage.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where does it get you? Yeah. And it's like with you, when you just, fucking asshole. Where does it what does it actually do? So I would say that's like,
but you're not in it. Anger. You're not doing it. So again, you know, I'm sure there are many scenarios. I see you getting completely out, incandescent about a cooking situation. I'm like, for fuck's sake, why is it this stressful? It's just what you know and what stresses you.
But none of that is good. Vice versa, what you might say. It's like when you're in a constant state of like. I
just want to read this comment because I think in this part, baked into what Minky Moo's saying here is possibly some of the solutions. So we also don't talk honestly enough with our friends and family about sharing our feelings for fear of being judged. It builds up, not being able to just be ourselves. Exactly. I agree. I think the vast majority of anger is often about us projecting. With me, it's often about projecting a scenario or a series of thoughts that people are saying or thinking or feeling, not getting it right, fearing the worst, keeping yourself quiet, not saying this, and then resentments build. And I think this is the case within every single family. Resentments always build. There's a feeling that someone's got a bit more freedom here, or a bit more this here, or they're saying that a bit much, or they're not acknowledging. And as soon as you inject this whole idea of slightly feeling sorry for yourself as well, then entitlement kicks in. And when entitlement kicks in and rage, it's curtains. As Yoda says, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering.
And let's not forget, what was it last week we talked about? We are the most unhappy people in Europe.
Yeah. And you can see, I mean, obviously we're going to talk about Israel Gaza later, but a blind rage, you can see it.
Tori was saying the other day that in Italy, a coffee is €1 or €1.10.
Wow.
I mean, I think in this country, people are really sick of politicians, of the cost of everything, of nothing bloody working,
everything's
everything
up.
Taking so much time, of terrible everyone being squeezed within an inch of bankruptcy just to be able to function. And of course that's going to make you stressed and angry.
Absolutely. I think the majority of my feelings on this are, before we move on, is thanks, Christos. Do you think it's sort of changed since pandemic?
I do. I completely agree, Christos.
Entirely agree.
Yeah.
I think the majority of it is about not feeling you have a voice. As soon as you don't feel you have a voice, you get frustrated. Now, and I think, and I don't want to get wanky about this, I genuinely think that our democratic political system speaks for no one.
Yeah,
it speaks for no one. And I think the longer that goes on, the more angry people are going to get.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. Well, one of the solutions could be a Men's Day, couldn't it? For some men. This is a piece in the Telegraph in which some chap who's written the piece, George Chesterton, has headed off on a Men's Day. And he says that the title of this piece is, "I thought the idea of a Men's Day was nonsense until I went to one." And where he went, they have ice baths, sharing and hugs, etc. And of course, this comes off the back of and speaks to the idea that suicide rates amongst men under 50 is one of the highest in this country, is one of the highest killers. What do we think about the idea of a Men's Day? When I say a Men's Day, it's like you head off and you go and meet other men. And
so this group was set up by a young man who had come to live here from South Africa, and he felt lonely.
Benjamin
he felt
Davies.
lonely, and he was lost at how he could possibly recreate the community and the sense of community that he'd had back at home. Oh no, was he? Hang on,
Benjamin
British
Davies.
Columbia. He was from
South Africa.
Yeah. So he set up these groups, and what do I first think when I hear men's group? I hear yes. I think to myself, yes.
Do you? The first thought, but that isn't my first
thought. I think because what we do much more naturally as women, men are left out of that. And I think that it is going to take some really awkward and uncomfortable times to shift. There is such a shift going on in the world, isn't there? In the way everybody's reaching and desperate to be feeling more, to be communicating more. Not everybody, but I mean, a lot of people in the Western world. There is a real soul starvation. You know, we don't have religion. We don't really have community. We've got the men.
Good
mostly
point, Jackie. I'll pull it back up in a minute.
Have the pub and football, and and that's what they talk about in this group, isn't it? And I really like the line that he gave, which was that loneliness, to say you are lonely as a man,
feels like the most emasculating thing a man could say.
Yeah. And that made me so sad. So sad. But if we really challenge ourselves on loneliness, and we've talked about this before, haven't we? About 6 months ago, we did a whole chat on loneliness. There is still this terrible shame attached to loneliness, because it's like, well, if you're lonely, what's wrong with you? Why can't you make any friends? Which just life in these times is just not that easy. It's very difficult to connect with people, especially if you're in cities and you haven't grown up in your, within your community. And of course, you can be very lonely with people as well. So the group involves, getting real with each other. It involved physical stuff. Actually,
games.
It was interesting. You said that the ice bath gave all of them exactly what they hoped it would give.
Yeah.
Mark, keep watching. Mark's going to be doing ice baths very soon. And where was the thing here that I really was interested in was, he talks about, they had this sort of round the circle chat. And they had talked about how stop trying to be listened to and listen more. This was one of the things. And the writer of the article said, this was the thing that stuck out to me most about it. The writer of the article said he was quite astonished that this was such a new idea to many of the men in the group, and that they kept coming back to that. Okay, we've got to listen, be more interested. That was it. Be more interested. rather than worrying about being interesting.
Well, no. And I think that was for me, because you said, oh, I'm fascinated to know what we both think. So,
was that what stuck out?
No,
well,
two thoughts. Just scrolling right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't think positive things as soon as I hear about men's health and men's days get together. I immediately, and this is maybe a cultural thing, and maybe it's the world I live in, I immediately think, oh my God, this is going to nibble towards Andrew Tate-ness. I worry that it's going to be kind of a sort of muscling down on, or a pushing down on, and a stressing of masculinity. And look, don't get me wrong. I think there's so much, we talk a lot about how there are great things to be cherished. Why do we always seek to deny what we are? There's great things about being a man. There's great things about being a woman. They're not all the negatives. One isn't, it's not always about being aggressive. It's not always about being overbearing or mansplaining and all that kind of stuff. And likewise, all of the caricatures that we have of women of a certain age and all that kind of stuff. But that's my first thought. So when I went to reading this article, my first thought, and when I hear about men's groups, I tell you what the real thing I think is, and it's a problem for me, is I think, okay, they are fanning away the idea of Andrew Tate-ness.
Absolutely.
But is it in there somewhere? Is there some sort of aspect? There isn't with this guy. You read through what he's talking about. It's not what it's about at all. That's my problem with it. And I think, so I then asked myself, well, why do I have that immediate worry that might be what it's about? Because I really, really, really stridently dislike the sort of masculinity that I find society promotes, or not idolizes, but kind of, accepts. And because I can't do it around sport, I don't want to do it around. I can, but I don't want to. It doesn't interest me. I don't get a brotherly kind of connection from sport. I don't, even though I liked it. But when it then got to the bit where it said, they were shocked when they were worried about being interested. They've always worried about being interesting. I think a lot of men are worried about being boring, irrelevant, invisible. And I think all the things that we traditionally assume most, and I've talked, I think, a lot now about women feeling, I think most men feel that too. So, and I don't think
there's such a vast difference between our emotional needs. It's just that women are more able to articulate their emotional needs sometimes than men. And it's so interesting that was your first port of call, because my first port of call was, oh God, this is men going to be able to be more open and going to be able to learn how to communicate better, and they're going to make friendships, and they're going to be, because how does the potato kind of philosophy get in? It's because men are feeling so isolated, and actually what we need is more of the smarter men pulling together. It takes a village, like with the women, like, an army of aunties, an army of uncles.
Well, I'm such a bundle of
we have to make ourselves well, and we have to communicate well first before we can share that with.
But I'm such a bundle of contradictions, because there's so many things about men being menly and manly in a positively unmisogynistic way. There's many things about being a man and men I don't like.
But it's funny,
I just don't like,
I
can't get onto the, I can't get with on the program. I just
see because I'm not thinking, the men's group is about going into being more manly.
No,
it's about I hear it's more about getting more in touch with their feminine side, because we all have our masculine and feminine sides, and we live more in them, on certain periods of our life. And so I think, and certainly this group sounded like a very positive thing.
But I think in my life, I've got in touch. I don't want to get in touch with that the feminine side of my masculinity. I quite like getting in touch with feminine women. I just like getting in touch. It's weird.
Or touching women.
No, not at all. I don't see it like that. It's weird. When I have a good male friendship, or when I connect with another man, it's not because I don't even feel there's anything particularly male about what we're talking about. What I try to get to and want to get to in all of those relationships is an emotional truth.
Connection.
I hate the word authenticity. It gets bandied around all over the place. What the fuck does it mean? But I do like to be emotionally authentic if I'm present with someone. So if I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that, I want to be able to, that person to feel they can talk to me, and I want to be able to talk to them too. I don't know if that's particularly male or not.
I don't hate the word authenticity being bandied about. I think the fact that we are so messed up with what we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to have and what we're supposed to think and feel, that people have lost their authentic selves. And actually, like in yoga practice, you're constantly trying to find and look in like, what is my authentic self? And that's when I probably cry the most in my yoga classes, is because I'm like, oh God, where is it? Who is it? Who is she? What's, because you have to be so many things. So
Laura Lou says, my husband at the weekend told my son to get up and stop crying when he fell over. Afterwards, he came to me and apologised because he realised he should have let him cry as much as he wanted.
That's so sweet.
Your husband apologised to you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. God, that is so sweet. You see, those moments when a man in your life puts down a clear boundary, I've mentioned it many times before. My granddad told me to not kiss him on the head. It wasn't like I was all over him like a soppy little rag. I'd just give him a kiss on the forehead at bedtime, and he made me feel so stupid. He said, "None of that now. You're old enough."
But you know what makes me so sad about that? That would be because his boundaries, because of
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his generation, he wasn't being horrible. It was
but also sometimes when people like that, it's because they have, they might. I'm not saying that granddad did, but what I hear often with that is like, did you experience something? And I'm not talking about sexual or anything with him, but I know he went to a very harsh school, didn't he? And that's when it's perpetuated, when it just goes on to, because maybe one of his loveliest things was you kissing him on the head, and he didn't allow himself it anymore.
Yeah, I suppose.
So sad.
So sad. But sort of my final thought on this is the reason I feel like a bundle of contradictions. On the one hand, I love embracing what makes men men and women women. But at the same time, I despise most of the things that I guess socially are received as being masculine. I don't like them. They don't speak to me, and they don't. I can't connect with them. My final thought
on that is, I think you've just got too much into that headspace with this idea, because this idea is about not being masculine, but trying to communicate and say it's okay to say I feel lonely. It's okay, I want a tribe. It's okay, I want to.
No, I just wanted. Yeah, sorry, I didn't finish the story. Just to finish the story with my dad. So when he said that went deep, and I didn't have many other men in my life, but the few men I did have, who I would argue, like Jim, who became a father figure, he was a bloke. He was he was an artist, but he was a bloke, and he was very, again, there was a kind of bravura, or a kind of not macho isn't the right word, but there's a kind of armor to being a man. And I think that armor, what I find really sort of sweet, if you like, about that armor is it's always about trying to hide or not being certain that you can show a softer side. Yeah. And I suppose maybe I'm unusual in that I walk into a room and I pretty much tear my armor off and try and sit there as best as I can. I don't succeed with that all the time. I don't do it all the time. But, that's when I really connect, when I feel the armor's off and we're wrestling in olive oil.
And this is what that men's group was all about, I think.
Hi, Reese. And as Christos says just above here, why does it have to be a day? Why do you have to have special days to do this? I think to try and bring people together. I think it's very much about people saying that they're lonely, naming that they're lonely, and going out and trying to make new connections with other men. Erin, an interesting conversation to hear from a non-binary. What I'm saying and feeling is kind of non-binary in a way. Is the gender binary is so ingrained in culture that people struggle to reconcile their traits that are more opposite to their sex. I think that's the confusion I feel. You're absolutely right. Reese, hi Reese. Childhood is the template of our lives that last a lifetime. With regards to men, our childhood conditioning that often comes with overwhelming demand to be masculine at the expense of vulnerability. I agree, and I think that can even happen in worlds or in areas of life, like in the creative arts. You can still protect yourself or not allow yourself to freely articulate yourself as a vulnerable person. I mean, being vulnerable is incredibly, incredibly tough.
Difficult to do. Tough. Brave.
Wow, that was interesting. So do you want to talk about Gaza, or we're 28 minutes, or do you want to we could hold back why women and men have different health issues or details. We want to talk about the Israel-Gaza war. Nadia, you posted something yesterday on Instagram, which I shared and posted too, which was just beyond shocking. Do you want to explain? I have got the film of it,
Yeah, the day before yesterday, actually. So this is a report done by CNN. Wow. CNN. And they actually, I'm really, really grateful to CNN for doing this. They have a number of whistleblowers from within the Israeli army who managed to take a few very sort of blurry photos. And the news that is coming out is just horrendous. I said to my mum, I was talking to my mum about CNN. For those who don't know, my father is Arabic, Jordanian, just other side of the West Bank, right next to Israel. And Mum said, the thing is, this has all been going on for years, these kind of detentions and everything. So it's not a surprise. But of course, it's just escalated. the Israeli government have admitted to a number of large military bases have been turned into, what is it they call them? Not interrogation. What is it?
Detention centers.
Detention centers. Now, some of what is coming out from these whistleblowers is just so distressing, and actually CNN recreated. Well, they've done that with an AI. Well, that be computer generated.
You can see that. I'm going to pop it up now without sound.
To recreate what they have been told by a number of whistleblowers. So these are Israeli medics told us what they saw inside Sadi Timan. I don't know how to say that, field hospital. Look at this. So what we're seeing here for those on podcasts is a number of surgical beds with men stripped, but apart from and padlocked with their hands and feet to the beds, wearing diapers, and blindfolded. And also the whistleblowers said that they would then be fed through a straw. It is such a shocking image, isn't it, Mark? I mean, I was so distraught when I saw this. What is this? This is total dehumanization of a people. Then the other stories coming from these whistleblowers of men and women and children as well, that are, handcuffed, kept in stress positions for very long periods of time, not allowed to talk, not allowed to move. Punishments are brutal if they do. They're taken outside, they are beaten. They've seen some people with their teeth and bones broken. If one of the punishments for moving or speaking is to have them their hands tied to the fence to keep them in a stress position. It is called, this place, a medical intern's dream, because a number of people have had to have their hands amputated due to the injuries from, this is CNN, folks, this is CNN, from the injuries from having their hands handcuffed for so long. And these are not people that are yet qualified enough to do such amputations. So totally incredible. There's also an interview there with one of the doctors that came from the, can you get the piece up now? Who talked about, within a couple of weeks, of his interrogation, it was decided that he didn't have any links to Hamas. I mean, the amount of doctors that have been taken off, tortured and murdered is just so distressing, just completely on its own. But also once he was found to not be connected to Hamas, he was kept beyond the time that he should have been kept in to be a translator for the interrogators, because he was very proficient in both Hebrew and Arabic. And he said, so he was given the, what would you say, the concession of being able to take his blindfold off. But he said that was a whole nother torture. This is Dr. Adnan Al-Bush. No, that wasn't it. No, who's the chap that
President said last week that
no, that's the guy that died, but it's the one that's
it's a very long article.
I'm really sorry, guys. The guy's such a long article, and
we
can find the name of the doctor. Yeah. So then he was kept, and he said he was allowed to take his blindfold off. And he said that was a whole new kind of torture, because I was actually able to see the true dehumanization of people.
So just to clarify, because people are asking, where's this from? This is whistleblowers who've spoken to CNN. CNN have recreated an AI kind of video film of the conditions of these people. Just again, like theoretically, any broadcaster should, you're always cross-referencing and verifying. CNN have also said in this piece that they interviewed a dozen former Gazan detainees. Obviously, these Gazan detainees couldn't confirm where they'd been held because they'd been blindfolded successfully. But their experiences or their first-hand testimonies of what they went through tallied with what the whistleblowers had revealed to CNN.
Yeah, because CNN did the check. So there's one of the photographs where the guys are in the sort of pen outside. You can see with the ceiling matches when the drones look over the area where the Israeli government have admitted there are these detention centers, and they have been able to match them and say it's the same place.
Can I just chime in on this for a bit? I just want to say, one of the most important things to say whenever we talk about this is that obviously the first kind of refrain back is, it's what happened on October the 2nd. All is hideous in war. All is hideous in conflict. People have been killed. People have been treated appallingly on both sides in different ways. The point that I think is really important about this material and this information getting out is that there is a deep and obvious imbalance between the material that's released about what is actually happening to Gazans by the IDF versus what we're told, and what a lot of which has been debunked subsequent to October the 7th, of the atrocities that occurred on October the 7th. A huge number of those original claims, right down to Biden saying he'd seen footage of certain things that hadn't existed, we have been actively lied to. So I think this isn't about saying, this has happened here and there hasn't been anything that's happened on the other side, just to put that there as a caveat right at the beginning. I think what's really important here is that this is one of the first, or one of the main sort of news outlets really stepping towards this. There is zero appetite in the British mainstream media, zero appetite to step towards any of this stuff.
Well, I'm really hoping that now CNN have done this, obviously the other news outlets aren't going to report on a report that CNN have done.
Well, hang on a minute.
They're all
they
in
do
bloody
that. Yeah,
competition.
but hang on. There's great precedent for all news outlets to do precisely that.
But what hopefully they're going to do is now start doing their own investigations, and hopefully they'll be shamed into not having done anything like this, not pulled the curtain just slightly to the right and had a little peep about what also might be going on beyond what the Israeli government allow us to be told. I mean, the last, Al Jazeera was the only news station allowed in there, and they threw them out last week. So that's where we're at.
Me too, absolutely. It's feeling like Abu Ghraib, the Iraq sort of detention center, torture center. It feels like Guantanamo. The thing about Guantanamo, and this is where it's also sort of really, in a sinister fashion, very clever, unfortunately, by these groups and countries and authorities that do this, because of course Guantanamo is hideously inhumane, but it's allowed.
It's allowed.
It's allowed. All know, and I think this speaks to the same thing. I think the Israelis.
And can we stop calling it a war, because it's not a war?
No,
it's not a war.
No. But I just wanted a couple of new details that have emerged today, which I think are really important. Egypt has, for the first time, said, and this is important, for the first time today, have said, the Guardian's reporting it, that they are going to back South Africa's appeal and, challenge in the International Court of Justice. Egypt, for the first time, have said that Israel taking the Rafah crossing and placing tanks on the border is in direct contravention of the agreement and peace deal that they struck with, is it Camp David deal with Israel in 1969. For the first time, Israel has said they don't trust America or Israel in this conflict, and they are backing South Africa. This is a major, major shift in geopolitical, for the area. This is massive, because really up until now, you could argue Egypt have very much been in a sort of cahoots, if you like, just managing it with Israel. They're coming for a lot of criticism from, free Palestinian protesters. But this is the first time where they are actively, like Ireland, I believe, are going to support the South African charge that's being presented to the ICJ.
All the Arab nations should.
No, I agree.
Do none of them see those children screaming to the videos, where are you, the Arabs? Where are you, our brothers? Where are you, our sisters? Help us, help us.
And also, just in other news this morning, Gaza's health system is a few hours from collapse, authorities say. This was posted about an hour ago. 130,000 Palestinians have been moved out of Rafah. Israeli tanks. What did I say last week?
To where?
What did I say last week? Israeli tanks and military are going back into the north.
Exactly what Mark said.
I promise you absolutely what's happening right now.
He said they'll go back up to the north, because they say, Hamas has gone back up to the north now.
Yeah.
They've never, ever hidden what the plan is, which is to raise Gaza to the ground. As Netanyahu said, we will turn it into a sea or whatever of ruins, and that's what they're doing.
And the other prediction that I think is absolutely going to happen is Netanyahu is filibustering and paddling until Trump gets in. Because there's no coincidence that Trump said, even in the midst of all of his kind of various legal woes, he said towards the end of last week, he said, what Jew could vote for Biden now? He's drawing that distinction. He is the friend of Israel. So we are now in this invidious situation in America, and I don't know what Americans who are free Palestinians feel, where you're now being asked, in a sense, to go, I need to vote for genocidal Joe.
This is because Trump is horrific. But I think Trump has scored an own goal there. Because actually, if he kept his mouth shut, people might have thought, if he just alluded a little that he might be a little softer, he would have probably got a lot of votes going over. But if he's going to be even worse than Genocide Joe, these poor Americans that are so passionately against what is happening are going to have to vote for Joe.
Well, put it this way, Netanyahu is absolutely going to string this out till November. He's going to get it to November when the election happens. This is what's going to happen.
This is the only thing Netanyahu's good at.
So where have they been moved to, Susan Sellings? They're literally being moved down south, then to the east a bit, then up north again. It's like the most grisly
displaced
puzzle.
Over and over again. And now we're seeing videos of really, really thin people, really starving children, crying as they're walking each step with their carrier bags, saying, where are we going now? Because they've been displaced many times. Please, please, please stay engaged. Follow social media accounts that are talking about this and showing what's going on. We just can't keep letting this happen.
And also, it's a very good point, Minky Moo, just as we sum up. Are a lot of Americans afraid to talk against Biden because they fear trumpet? More than likely. It's a real kind of Faustian pact, isn't it?
So again, I would say, if anyone thinks that what is happening in Gaza does not affect the stability of the entire world, you are mad.
Yeah, even if it's self-interest,
you are mad. Even if you don't care about those people, it's really important.
And there we go. And so finally, I just want to say a huge thank you to James. You know who you are. You came up to us over the weekend. And a special hello to Holly.
James and Holly.
You. Very, very, very
You made our day.
You really did.
James.
Sending you love.
And Mark is going to put under here the link to the CNN. Oh, it's there. So please just read it. You will just, obviously I was paraphrasing through it, but it's all there for you to read.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a good day, guys.
Love you all.